Welcome to Revenge Lineage Lab, and today we are bringing you the account of Jasmine Wells, a 31-year-old woman whose story begins not with a dramatic confrontation or a sudden revelation, but with a single sentence spoken across a dining table that finally made visible what had been hidden in plain sight for an entire year. Jasmine Wells worked as a senior facilities energy analyst, a professional whose daily responsibilities involved reviewing consumption reports for commercial buildings, identifying wasted power in office towers, hospitals, and warehouses, and detecting financial losses caused by careless usage before anyone else in the organization noticed. She was, by every professional measure, someone who understood exactly how systems drain resources and how long those drains can go undetected when no one is paying close enough attention. The painful irony that defined her personal life during the 12 months leading up to this dinner was that she had applied none of that professional clarity to the single largest drain in her own existence, because the people responsible for it shared her last name. The total amount Jasmine Wells paid toward her parents' household utility bills over the course of 1 year was $6,143. And that figure does not include late fees, emergency reconnect charges, or the cost of the second job she took for 3 months doing weekend energy audits specifically so that her parents' house in Madison would not go dark while she lived and worked in Milwaukee. The bills covered electricity, gas, water, and an internet and phone bundle that Ruth, her mother, justified by explaining that her church meetings were held online and that her father needed streaming access to keep his mind sharp. Each time a new request arrived, Ruth framed the situation as temporary. Each time, Jasmine's brother Alex, who lived 15 minutes from their parents, had a reason that excused him from contributing. He was saving for a new truck. His children needed summer camp. His wife had placed a kitchen renovation deposit before checking the account balance. Jasmine heard every explanation. She paid every bill. She told herself this was what a good daughter did. The first call had come at 10:43 in the evening when Jasmine was sitting at her kitchen island reviewing a heating efficiency proposal for a hospital wing. Her mother's voice on the phone sounded small and almost embarrassed. Ruth said they just needed a little help until her father's pension adjustment came through and asked for $480. Jasmine transferred the money within 10 minutes, without asking how the bill had reached that level, and without asking why Alex had not been contacted first. By spring, Jasmine had created a spreadsheet because, as she later said, numbers were easier to look at than feelings. Electric came to $1,842. Gas came to $1,376. Water was $711. The internet and phone bundle accounted for the remainder, alongside reconnect fees and same-day urgent payments that carried additional charges. What the family did not know was that after the fourth emergency payment, Jasmine had begun saving everything. She kept screenshots of every text message. She saved voicemail files. She downloaded bank confirmations. She preserved the texts in which Ruth wrote asking her not to tell her father how much she was requesting because he would feel ashamed. Followed 2 days later by a message relaying that Alex believed Jasmine made more than enough and did not understand why she was making things difficult. Jasmine saved these records not because she had planned a confrontation. She saved them because she understood, in some part of herself she had not yet fully listened to, that the day would come when the people she had supported would deny what had been asked of her. On the evening of the dinner, Jasmine drove to Madison through dark highway stretches with rain against the windshield. Ruth had sent 3 text messages during the drive, asking whether Jasmine could quietly handle the electric bill before dessert, because the account was behaving strangely again. Jasmine had read the message at a red light and looked at the passenger seat where a wrapped ceramic serving bowl sat, one she had made herself during a weekend pottery class and glazed in soft blue because her mother had always said that blue made a house feel calm. She had made that bowl with both hands, smoothing the rim carefully, hoping that this dinner might be something different. She arrived to find her father greeting her with the words, "You made it," as though she were a scheduled delivery rather than a daughter who had driven through rain. Her brother Alex announced that big city money had arrived and laughed when no one joined him. Before Jasmine had removed her coat, Ruth pulled her aside and murmured that she should please not bring up the bills in front of anyone because it made them look irresponsible. Jasmine looked at her mother's careful makeup, her pearl earrings, and the polished expression Ruth had prepared for the relatives in the next room, and understood something she had been avoiding for a long time. Ruth did not mind receiving the money. She only minded having witnesses to the receiving of it. Throughout dinner, Jasmine stayed quiet and listened while Ruth praised Alex for fixing a loose cabinet hinge and described it as stepping up. She listened while her father said Alex always came when called. She listened while Alex complained about property taxes and remarked that some people did not have the luxury of living alone without real responsibilities. Jasmine thought of her own rent, her student loans, her car insurance, her retirement contributions, her medical expenses, and the 3 months of weekend work she had taken on so that the lights in her parents' home would stay on. She said nothing. Then Ruth looked across the table, smiled as though delivering a harmless observation, and said that Jasmine had done well, but could do more if she were not so selfish. Every utensil in the room paused. Jasmine looked at the ceiling lights above the table, the same lights she had been paying for month after month, and she raised her glass until the ice clinked and said, "You will notice my selfishness when the lights go out." The room changed in the silence that followed. Ruth's smile dropped so quickly it resembled fear. Alex leaned back and called the comment classy while accusing her of threatening their parents. Jasmine placed her phone face up on the table and said she was done allowing her help to be called love when they received it and selfishness when she stopped providing it. Ruth said this was not the place. Jasmine replied that since the insult had been delivered in public, the truth could also be delivered in public. Her father spoke her name as a warning, but his voice carried no force. Jasmine opened the first screenshot. Ruth's text appeared on the screen asking Jasmine to pay the electric before noon and instructing her not to ask Alex because he was stressed and Jasmine was better with money. Jasmine read it aloud. A cousin at the far end of the table shifted in his chair. Ruth said, "Stop." Jasmine moved to the next message, in which Ruth asked her to handle the gas bill without telling her father. Then the next, in which Ruth said she had told Alex not to worry because Jasmine always came through. Alex's expression closed. A voice memo followed, in which Ruth's recorded voice said that Alex had children and Jasmine only had herself, and asked what else they were supposed to do. The room went quiet in a way Jasmine described as not peaceful, not shocked, but exposed. Ruth moved toward the phone, and Jasmine moved it back. Jasmine said the total was $6,143 across 12 months, and that she had every receipt. Her father said he had been told Jasmine had helped with a few small things. Jasmine turned to him and said that his house had stayed warm the previous winter because she had paid the gas bill in February, March, and April. That his lights had remained on because she had paid the electric bill 5 times, and that his internet had stayed connected because Ruth had told her his blood pressure appointments required online access. She said she had not embarrassed him. She had protected him. Ruth said Jasmine was humiliating her at her own table. Jasmine replied that she had protected the family in private, while Ruth had humiliated her in public. Alex pushed back his chair and said no one had forced Jasmine to pay. Jasmine nodded and said he was correct, and that no one had forced her, that they had trained her. That sentence, delivered without volume or drama, landed harder than anything shouted could have. When Aunt Linda suggested everyone calm down and encouraged Jasmine not to make things bigger, Jasmine responded that people who say do not make it bigger are the reason it had grown this large, and that everyone present had seen what was happening, had benefited from the quieter version of Jasmine, and had said nothing until she began to speak. Ruth shifted to a different approach and asked how Jasmine could repay her after everything Ruth had sacrificed. Jasmine asked her mother quietly whether she had sacrificed for Jasmine or for the image of a perfect family she could display to neighbors. The color left Ruth's face. Jasmine then announced what would happen next. She would remove her card from every utility account that evening. She would change the login credentials she had created. She would cancel the automatic payments. If the family required assistance in the future, they could prepare a written budget, show her where their money was going, and ask respectfully. The emergency daughter service, as she described it, was closed. Ruth asked whether Jasmine would allow her parents to sit in the dark. Jasmine said no. They had done that themselves by ignoring every bill until she rescued them, and that she was simply no longer standing between them and the outcome of their own choices. Cousin Brian quietly picked up his phone, and within seconds, the family group chat began to circulate the question of whether it was true that Jasmine had paid their utilities all year, and noted that Ruth had told relatives Jasmine never helped. Ruth grabbed her own phone as the notifications arrived, watching the public image she had constructed begin to fracture in real time. Not because Jasmine had raised her voice, but because Jasmine had produced documentation. Ruth demanded the messages be deleted. Jasmine said no. Then, Jasmine's phone displayed an email notification from Marin Patel, the regional director at Northline Energy Systems. The message offered her the position of Regional Director of Building Performance in the Chicago office, a role with a higher salary, a leadership title, a relocation package, a company apartment for the first 2 months, and a start date 6 weeks away. This was a position Jasmine had nearly declined to interview for because Ruth had been hinting in recent months that Jasmine should consider moving closer to Madison now that her parents were getting older. Jasmine stood and told the table she had just been promoted. No one had a prepared response. Ruth's face moved through surprise, calculation, and panic with a speed that Jasmine said allowed her to see the pattern of her entire childhood compressed into 3 seconds. Ruth said Chicago was farther away. Jasmine said yes. When Ruth urged her not to make a major life decision while upset, Jasmine replied that she had made the decision before dinner and simply had not known it yet. Her father said he was proud of her. Jasmine asked him whether he was proud or afraid she would be harder to reach. He looked away. Ruth's next question, delivered after the room had absorbed the weight of the promotion, was what they were supposed to do about the bills. Not whether Jasmine was all right. Not how she had been made to feel so alone. The bills. Jasmine said, "There it is," and put her phone in her purse. She walked to the counter, picked up the blue bowl she had made with her own hands, and tucked it under her arm. Ruth said Jasmine was taking her gift. Jasmine said it had never been Ruth's gift because she had not opened it. Later that evening, sitting in her car in the driveway with the heater running, Jasmine removed her card from the electric account, changed the recovery email, downloaded the confirmation, then did the same for gas, water, and internet. Each action was small and quiet, but together, they redrew a boundary that her family had spent years treating as non-existent. Ruth came to the porch without a coat and apologized, saying not because people now knew, but because Jasmine had been right, and Ruth had made her responsible for things she should never have been asked to carry. Jasmine asked why the apology was coming now. Ruth said that when relatives began asking questions, she had wanted to blame Jasmine, and then Alex had asked whether Jasmine would still be covering the following month, and she had heard how that sounded. Jasmine told her mother it had sounded ugly, because it was ugly. Ruth said yes, and Revenge Lineage Lab notes that it was the first honest word she had spoken all evening. Jasmine drove back to Milwaukee that night. She accepted the Chicago position 3 weeks later. 6 weeks after that, she moved into an apartment with tall windows and placed the blue bowl on her own dining table and filled it with oranges. Ruth eventually sent her a photograph of the first utility bill the family had paid without Jasmine's involvement, accompanied by 3 words: "We handled it." Jasmine smiled, not because everything had been repaired, but because the weight had finally returned to the hands that had always been responsible for carrying it. The lesson this story leaves behind is the same one that Jasmine carried with her to Chicago. Family is not a structure in which one person demonstrates their love by absorbing consequences without limit. Real family honors boundaries before resentment becomes the only language spoken between people. Staying silent to preserve peace often teaches those around you that they may continue taking without gratitude. And the word no does not destroy a healthy relationship, but instead reveals whether the relationship was ever healthy to begin with.